The world is divided into 4 spheres, each sphere divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Coming up on the show, Revolution. It's the title of Russell Brand's latest book. I'll speak with esteemed U.S. leftist Michael Albert about the book. But first, a look at media and technology. Computers are increasingly intruding into the world of journalism. Journalists are using GPS-guided drones to obtain footage that can help them recreate newsworthy structures for investigation or reporting purposes. Computer scientists are creating software programs to help journalists identify rumors on Twitter. But a distinctive new feature is the usage of computers to replace journalists. By using algorithms, new so-called robots are pumping out hundreds of articles in an amount of time in which no human could. This raises the question of whether or not we can trust machines to deliver our news and make us wonder if journalism can eventually become obsolete. A new report published by the American Journalism Review shows that regular news consumers do not tell the difference between computer-written articles and human-written ones, but journalists do. Despite acknowledging the capability and expertise of the machines, journalists were able to detect the computer-written material. According to the findings, journalists tend to be more accurate. Could computers replace journalists? Further research is needed to determine such a question. But one thing's for sure, computer-generated news is a growing trend in leading news agencies. Many big ideas have made their way into 2014's pop culture and public sphere. Revolution was one of those ideas. Comedian, actor, and political activist Russell Brand argued the case for revolution in his latest book of the same name. Brand argues that the system is broken and full of hypocrisy. Michael Albert has been writing about revolution since the 1960s. He is co-founder of Z Magazine and ZNet and author of Paricon, Life After Capitalism. He joins me to discuss Brand's revolution. Hello, Michael, and welcome to Imaginary Lines.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First of all, what do you think about the title of Brand's book and what's happening in the world that makes it relevant? Is it the right time to be talking about revolution?
I like the title. What makes it relevant is what has made it relevant for a long time, that societies are organized in a manner that hurts people, that causes people incredible pain, that kills people, that robs dignity, and need to be reorganized.
How do you define the concept of revolution?
Maybe I do it a little differently than some other people. A lot of people focus on, well, revolution must be violent, or revolution must be quick, or revolution must be explosive, or some such thing. I don't think that really is relevant. Those are features that may or may not be present in a particular case. For me, what revolution is just a transformation of the basic institutions of society, and some part of society, or in all parts of society, to something fundamentally different, fundamentally new. A good revolution obviously changes to much better institutions. A bad revolution would make things even worse, change to worse institutions.
Brand proposes that the principles of equality, nonviolence, and ecological responsibility make up the pillars of revolution. How do you assess the pillars?
You know, I happen to define my understanding of a new society in terms of some basic underlying values. I think people should be able to control their own lives, so self-management. I think there should be equity in distribution, so that people should get what they deserve, which in my thinking means should get back for how long they work, how hard they work, and for the onerousness of the conditions under which they work. And there ought to be solidarity among people rather than a rat race. There ought to be diversity of outcomes. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way would be to say we want to get rid of classes and all hierarchical layering of one group above another group. And there are other ways that one could do it. But ultimately, what's going to matter is what institutions are we for? What do we want to replace current institutions with?
And limiting the discussion of revolution solely to the economic sphere, Brand writes that the whole concept of property is preposterous. And I'm wondering what other institutions within the economic sphere should be changed.
I'm not sure what he might mean or what he might have in mind by property is preposterous, but what I would mean would be private ownership of workplaces, of vast stores of resources and tools with which society functions is preposterous, and I would agree it is. Other institutions that I think in the economy in particular need to be replaced are markets for allocation, or for that matter, central planning for allocation. We need a cooperative and a negotiated manner of doing allocation that's consistent with people controlling their own lives. I think that the division of labor that we have, which consigns about 80% of the population to doing rote and repetitive work that's disempowering, while 20% monopolize all the empowering tasks, I think that has to go also, that creates a class division, not just the property-based class division, owners and workers, but a division between people who are in essence in the saddle in terms of determining what society does and how it is organized and what it looks like, what I'll call the coordinator class, and the working class.
And now, in the transitionary phase from an old society to a new society, Brand rules out the possibility of voting. He doesn't see it as very useful in that transitionary process. And I'm wondering, what type of orientation do you see guiding a transitionary period?
I think what he's saying is that the kind of voting that we have, that a particular way of organizing elections and a particular way of allocating information and of narrowing the range of options and of limiting the amount of information that people have is horrible, and I would agree, it is. But to rule out election per se, meaning voting per se, meaning expressing one's desires and tallying the results per se, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Russell Brand is coming from the perspective of a comedian and actor, and he also has a background of political activism. How does this all add up into his writing style? What do you make of his way of communicating these ideas?
I think that Brand tries to talk to people where they're at, tries to talk from real personal experience, is willing to put himself openly and emotively into what he's saying. He uses humor, which can be very effective in overcoming resistance and overcoming people's hesitancy and opening up the discussion and making it more effective. On the other hand, because of what he's doing, because of the size of the audience that he's trying to deal with and the timeline that is available to him when he does it, for instance, on that video show that he's now doing, there's a limit to how far he can go. I wish he would do a little bit more that was positive about what we want, a little bit more about strategy. But by and large, I think most leftists, most people who are seeking social change, have something to learn from Russell Brand.
Brand says he likes the idea of creating autonomous institutions that serve social functions and that are not guided by profit. And it's a nice sounding idea, but I'm wondering what you would add to it.
If he's saying he wants to, or he thinks it would be a good thing for people to band together and to create institutions which provide services, which meet needs, which develop potentials, after-school programs, preschool programs, food distribution centers, educational centers, or whatever, in the present, that are autonomous from control from above, and that aren't motivated by profit, I very much agree. I think that not motivated by profit is one variable that is crucially important. You don't want to set up an institution which replicates the structure of the society that you say you're trying to overcome. Instead, what we have to do is figure out, well, what do we want? And once we know what we want, broadly termed, broadly in terms of the main institutions that we want, then the ones that we want to set up now, to the extent we can, should reflect the same values and the same structures. And I would imagine that's what Russell probably has in mind too.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on Imaginary Lines.
Thank you for having me.
U.S. officials confirmed Thursday, December 11th, that the government financed a 4-year program to promote Cuba's rap music scene in an effort to destabilize the island's government. It seemed like a good idea to support civil society, said Matt Herrick, spokesman for the U.S. Agency for International Development, which financed the secret program. It's not something we are embarrassed about in any way, he added. The program, which ended in 2012, was revealed by the Associated Press and described as a largely unsuccessful covert program. A number of documents, including contracts, emails, chat transcripts, expense reports, PowerPoint documents, photographs, and passports, revealed that USAID, through the Washington, D.C.-based company Creative Associates International, financed the program to create a subversive rap and hip-hop movement against the Cuban government. The agency also denied that the program was covert, noting that Congress was briefed on it. However, U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy, who chairs the subcommittee which handles USAID's budget, described the program in a statement as misguided and mismanaged. Leahy said that USAID never informed Congress about the program and should never have been involved with anything so incompetent and reckless. It was appallingly stupid, he said. That's it for today's Imaginary Lines. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Please join me next week.